A brand new U.S. Navy destroyer doesn't begin its life charging through waves. It starts silent and motionless, locked on land, surrounded by steel, concrete, and clipboards. Thousands of tons of warship, built piece by piece, waiting for one irreversible moment. When water finally reaches the hull, there's no cheering, no rush, just calculations, slow movement, and a crew watching every inch like their lives depend on it, because they do. This isn't a dramatic slide into the sea. It's a careful release, a floating dry dock, valves opening by design, tugboats nudging a ship that still isn't allowed to fight, sail far, or even call itself operational. One mistake here can warp steel, misalign systems, or delay a warship for months. And that's the part most people never see, the hidden choreography that turns a landlocked hull into a living destroyer. In this video, we're breaking down exactly how the U.S. Navy launches its newest destroyers step by step and why it's one of the most precise operations in modern shipbuilding. If you want more stories like this, subscribe now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Every U.S. Navy destroyer begins life far from open water, in places that feel more like industrial cities than shipyards. Two facilities dominate this world: Bath Iron Works in Maine, carved into the rocky edge of the Kennebec River, and Huntington Ingalls Industries in Pascagoula, Mississippi, stretched along the warm, shallow waters of the Gulf Coast. These yards don't just build ships, they manage risk, precision, and pressure at a national scale. Bath Iron Works specializes in land-level construction. The destroyer grows horizontally, section by section, on a massive concrete platform called the Land Level Transfer Facility. This design choice isn't cosmetic. It allows gravity to stay neutral while workers weld, align, and outfit the hull. Steel plates don't twist, frames don't sag. Every measurement stays predictable. For a warship packed with radar arrays, missile cells, and sensitive combat systems, predictability matters more than speed. Ingalls Shipbuilding takes a different route, but the logic stays the same. Their destroyers are built on land, supported by rail-based transport systems designed to move thousands of tons without shock or flex. The ship never touches water until the yard decides it is ready, not when it looks finished, when it is finished enough to survive the ocean's physics. These yards work under a quiet truth. Launch day is not a celebration. It is an audit. Years of engineering choices are about to be tested by buoyancy, balance, and pressure. Any flaw that slipped through during construction won't stay hidden once the ship begins to float. Thousands of workers touch a destroyer before launch. Welders shape the hull. Electricians thread miles of cable. Engineers track tolerances down to millimeters. Inspectors document everything. A destroyer may carry missiles and guns one day, but at birth, it carries paperwork, sensor covers, and temporary supports. This is where the Navy's patience shows. The shipyard doesn't rush toward the water. It holds the ship back, delays the moment, and prepares for a move that looks slow on camera but leaves no room for error. Because before water ever touches steel, the destroyer has to move, and moving it is one of the most delicate jobs in the entire process. From a distance, a nearly finished destroyer looks ready to sail. The hull is painted. The deckhouse rises like a fortress. The bow cuts sharply forward. But in the shipyard, appearances don't matter. What matters is whether the ship is structurally prepared to float without help. Destroyers are built in large blocks, each one pre-outfitted with piping, cabling, and internal spaces before being joined together. This approach reduces construction time, but it also concentrates risk. Once those blocks are welded into a single hull, small alignment errors can ripple through the ship. That's why land-level construction exists. Flat ground removes variables that water introduces too early. At this stage, the ship is still supported by artificial means: steel supports, transport cradles, keel blocks designed to hold weight evenly. The hull has never felt buoyancy. It has never shifted under its own balance. Engineers know exactly how heavy each section is and where that weight sits. They track it obsessively. Before launch preparations begin, the shipyard locks down hundreds of details. Temporary openings are sealed, tanks are checked for proper isolation, weight estimates are recalculated and compared against reality. Even paint thickness is accounted for. On a warship, Extra weight is never invisible. What surprises most people is how incomplete the ship still is. Combat systems are not fully activated. Radar arrays may be installed but not powered. Weapons are absent. The destroyer looks intimidating, but it is fragile in its own way. One uneven load shift during launch could misalign shafts or stress welds deep inside the hull, so the shipyard slows everything down. Crews rehearse movements that will happen over hours, not seconds. Engineers review flood plans that dictate how water will enter a dry dock or floating platform inch by inch. There is no moment for improvisation here. Launch day doesn't reward confidence. It rewards caution. The destroyer is not being introduced to the sea yet. It is being allowed to meet physics for the first time. And to make that meeting survivable, the ship has to travel sideways before it ever moves forward. The most counterintuitive part of launching a U.S. Navy destroyer happens before the launch itself. The ship moves slowly sideways, and it does so without touching water. At Bath Iron Works, the destroyer rests on a land-level platform until it is transferred onto a floating dry dock. This transfer uses a synchronized system of rails and transport mechanisms designed to distribute weight evenly across the hull. The ship does not roll. It does not tilt. Any unexpected movement would be a red flag. Ingalls Shipbuilding relies on a similar philosophy. Their railcar systems are engineered to carry massive loads while keeping the hull level at all times. The ship is guided from its construction position to a floating dry dock that waits nearby. From above, it looks simple. From ground level, it feels tense. This movement is slow by design. Feet per hour, not miles. Every stop is deliberate. Engineers watch deflection sensors. Crew members monitor contact points. If something feels wrong, the process halts. No one argues with the data. What makes this stage dangerous isn't speed, it's momentum. Thousands of tons of steel resist stopping once they begin to move. That's why the transfer feels less like transportation and more like negotiation. The shipyard coaxes the destroyer into position rather than forcing it. By the time the hull rests fully on the floating dry dock, the destroyer has already passed a silent test. Its weight distribution matches predictions. Its structure responds as expected. Nothing creaks. Nothing shifts unexpectedly. Only then does the yard move forward. The destroyer has crossed the line from being a land-locked structure to a candidate for flotation. Because once the dock seals and the valves open, gravity hands control over to the ocean. If this kind of hidden engineering fascinates you, subscribe. These ships don't launch with spectacle. They launch with precision. And the next step is where everything truly changes. When the destroyer finally meets water, it does not splash. It listens. The floating dry dock becomes a controlled environment, sealed and prepared for flooding. Engineers follow a strict sequence. Valves open in stages. Water rises slowly, measured against predicted draft marks. The goal is not to float the ship quickly. It is to let buoyancy increase evenly across the hull. At first, nothing appears to happen. The ship still rests on its supports. But below the surface, physics is already at work. Water pressure begins to share the load. The hull transitions from being carried entirely by steel to being partially supported by buoyant force. This is one of the most sensitive phases of the entire launch. Teams monitor list and trim constantly. A few inches of imbalance can signal trapped air, uneven flooding, or unexpected weight shifts. If readings drift outside limits, the process pauses. Corrections are made. The shipyard never rushes water. Eventually, the destroyer reaches true flotation. The moment is quiet. There is no visible drama. The hull lifts free of its supports, floating independently for the first time. Years of calculations either prove themselves or expose mistakes. But even now, the ship is not allowed to roam. Tugboats hold position. Lines stay ready. The dock continues flooding until the destroyer sits at its intended draft. Only after final checks confirm stability does the shipyard proceed. For modern destroyers, this step has become routine but never casual. Recent Flight 3 ships have followed this exact choreography, floating free only after hours of careful flooding and monitoring. The process looks calm because calm is enforced. The destroyer has not been launched in the cinematic sense. It has been released, given permission to float. Everything that comes next depends on this moment going perfectly. And now that the ship can float, the real driving begins. Once the destroyer is fully afloat, the most misleading assumption kicks in. People think the hard part is over. In reality, the ship is now at its most vulnerable. It floats, but it cannot protect itself. No propulsion, no steering, no margin for drift. This is where tugboats take control. Modern U.S. Navy destroyers leave the dry dock under external power, guided by tug crews who specialize in moving vessels with zero forgiveness. The hull may weigh thousands of tons, but water reduces friction, which means even light wind or current can push the ship offline. Tug captains compensate constantly, applying pressure in short, controlled bursts rather than long pushes. The choreography is planned long before launch day. Tide tables are studied, wind forecasts are tracked down to hourly windows, harbor depth and pier clearance are rechecked. Fender placement is rehearsed. Every line handler knows where to stand and when to move. There are no improvisations. As the destroyer exits the dry dock, tugboats hold it steady while the dock itself is repositioned or cleared. Only then does the slow transit begin. The ship moves at walking speed, sometimes slower. Crews watch clearances between hull and pier, hull and dock wall, hull, and anything that could leave a mark. Cosmetic damage is unacceptable. Structural damage is unthinkable. What surprises most viewers is how silent this phase feels. No engines roaring, no dramatic movement, just radio calls, tug engines idling up and down, and the soft sound of water against steel. That quiet hides the risk. One misjudged angle can stress mooring points or scrape the hull, delaying delivery by weeks. Once the destroyer reaches its temporary pier, lines are secured in a specific order. Tension is adjusted gradually to avoid shock loads. Only when the ship sits stable, square, and secure does the yard breathe again. This is the first time the destroyer rests in open water, held in place not by concrete or steel blocks, but by human judgment and rope. And now that the ship is floating and secured, the question changes from will it float to will it fight? A newly launched destroyer looks intimidating, but it is not yet dangerous. Launch marks a structural milestone, not a combat one. The months that follow are about transforming an empty platform into a functioning warship. After mooring, shipyard teams begin intensive outfitting. Radar arrays that were installed in pieces are fully integrated and tested. Combat system hardware is connected to power and data networks. Cooling systems are brought online. Software baselines are loaded, verified, and rechecked. Nothing runs at full capacity yet. Everything is staged. For Flight 3 destroyers, this phase is especially demanding. The AN/SPY-6 radar requires massive electrical power and thermal management. Its arrays must be precisely aligned and its cooling systems tuned before full activation. Any structural misalignment from launch would show up here, which is why earlier steps are so unforgiving. Weapons come later. Vertical launch system cells are inspected, certified, and left empty for a long time. Gun mounts are tested mechanically before live systems are introduced. The ship must prove it can support its own complexity. Inside, crews install everything sailors will eventually rely on. Navigation systems, communication suites, damage control equipment, berthing spaces, even simple items like doors and ladders are adjusted after launch, since the ship's posture in water reveals small shifts that land construction cannot. At the same time, Navy inspectors begin their own assessments. They review documentation, observe tests, and flag discrepancies. Shipbuilders fix issues. Engineers retest systems. This back and forth continues for months. It is methodical and repetitive by design. Launch may be the first public milestone, but inside the yard, no one treats it as an ending. It is permission to move forward. Only when the ship can generate power reliably, manage heat, and support its sensors does it earn the next step. Because proving a destroyer can float is one thing, proving it can move under its own power is another. The first time a destroyer leaves the pier under its own power, it is no longer just a construction project. It is a ship on trial. Builders' trials come first. Shipyard crews and Navy representatives take the destroyer to sea to test propulsion, steering, electrical generation, and basic navigation. The goal is not perfection. It is discovery. Engines are pushed through different loads. Rudders are tested at varying speeds. Power systems are stressed to expose weaknesses. Nothing is hidden. Every vibration, alarm, or anomaly is logged. When the ship returns to port, teams fix what surfaced. Then they go back out again. Acceptance trials follow. This is where the Navy steps in fully. Inspectors evaluate combat systems, sensors, communications, and survivability features. They simulate failures. They demand redundancy. If something does not meet spec, it does not pass. Timelines stretch, but standards do not bend. Only after acceptance does delivery occur. The shipyard hands the destroyer over to the Navy, but the journey is still not complete. Crew training intensifies. Systems are refined. Live weapons testing lies ahead. Commissioning is the public moment people recognize. The ship receives its name officially. The crew takes the deck. The destroyer becomes an active unit in the fleet. But commissioning rests on everything that came before it. The land-level build, the translation, the flood, the tug work, the months of outfitting and trials. When a destroyer finally deploys, it carries the quiet proof of those early days. It floats correctly. It steers cleanly. Its systems align because the launch was done right. That is why the U.S. Navy treats launching not as spectacle, but as discipline. Because the ocean never forgives shortcuts. From the first steel laid on land to the moment a destroyer takes the sea under its own power, nothing about this journey is accidental. Every move is measured, every risk controlled. When a U.S. Navy destroyer finally sails, it carries years of discipline with it. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe for more behind-the-scenes naval stories.